Now, this year, on this important day, which falls in the time between Pesach and Shavuot, teaches us that the true independence of the people of Israel, especially the land of Israel, can only come through dedication to Hashem. Teach us that the whole purpose of us being taken as a special people of Hashem was that we should fulfill the mitzvot. So it's a good time on which to understand the significance of the mitzvot in general, and we're going to deal with the mitzvah of prayer in particular. So the sages say that as soon as a child is able to speak, we should teach him the pasuk at the end of the Chumash, Torah tzivah lanu Moshe morasha kilat Yaakov. Moshe gave us the Torah, which is the heritage of the people of Israel. On this there is a famous statement made by the Tanaim that Torah has the numerical value of 611, because Moshe gave us 611 mitzvot, and the two other mitzvot were directly given by Hashem to Am Yisrael. Two others are Anochi v'Ori Elecha mipi hagvura shemanu. They were heard directly by 3 million of our ancestors at the foot of the mountain of Sinai. The other commandments had to be given over and explained through Moshe Rabbeinu. Nearly all the commentators, they regard this not just as an allegorical statement, but as a basic principle. There are 613 mitzvot in total. And although there's some difference of opinion how to describe what is a mitzvah and what is not, but the 613 remains as being a guideline to understand how many mitzvot there are. We say, Mi Moshe ad Moshe lo kam ko Moshe, that from the time of Moshe Rabbeinu until today, there's not been any great genius who's been able to crystallize, we might say, the total teaching of the Tanakh, combined with the teaching of our sages, like the Rambam. So the Rambam, he wrote, first of all, called the Sefer HaMitzvot, where he rounded up all the mitzvot. And in order to explain which sentences and verses of the Chumash should be regarded as a mitzvah and which not, he set forward 14 principles. Because there are many mitzvot that are repeated in different ways, but there are many mitzvot that include many different details. And not always is each detail considered a separate mitzvah. So he makes many rules, which we won't go into at the moment. But I do want to give the following introduction to this shir, or the mitzvah of tefillah, by a brief summary that the Rambam gives at the end of his magnum opus, because the Sefer HaMitzvot was written as an introduction to his greatest work, known as the Mishnah Torah, which means the repetition of the Torah, or another name for it is Yad HaChazakah, the strong arm, and that's a mnemonic, because Yad is 14, and there are 14 books. And in the Sefer HaMitzvot, which preceded it, there he makes 14 rules concerning what's a mitzvah, what's not a mitzvah. So it's an introduction to understand the concept of mitzvah. So he says, at the end of his great work, Yad HaChazakah, where he speaks about the laws that apply to all human beings, the universal laws of mankind, Sheva Mitzvot bin Noach. So he writes like this. He says, Adam HaRishon was given 6 mitzvot. Idolatry, blasphemy, murder, sexual immorality, incest, robbery, these are all negatives, and also the positive command to establish courts of justice. Although all these are tradition in our hands from Moshe Rabbeinu, and also Hadat Notelahem, they are really basics of common sense moral behavior. They're nevertheless included in the words of the Torah, and it would appear that Adam was given his commandments. Because the sages, it's all based on different passages in the Gemara. Noah was given a seventh mitzvah, which was not to eat a limb from a live animal. Therefore, Noah was given 7 mitzvahs. And then this continued in the whole world till Avraham Avinu. When he came, he was given the further mitzvah of Brit Milah, and also he prayed the prayer of the morning, his Pala Shachrit. Yitzchak separated Maisa, and he added another tefillah, which comes at the time when the heat of the sun wanes towards the evening. Yaakov added the prohibition of eating the fats that are connected with the sinew of the thigh, and he also prayed the night prayer. Then in Egypt, Amram, the father of Moshe, was given further mitzvot till Moshe Rabbeinu came, and then through him the other mitzvot were given, apart from the 2 which came directly to all the people from the word of Hashem. And it's in this way that then the Ram introduces the laws of Bnei Noach. So it's a bit unusual, to put it that way. If the Ram was counting up the mitzvot, we know Milah is a mitzvah which was given originally to Avraham Avinu, and then it was given to the whole people. Kidan Asher is also something he even says in the Breshit, that this is the law given to Bnei Israel later on, although it was introduced through what happened in the struggle between Yaakov and the prince of Esau. And then he also mentions the 3 tefillot. He says that's what they did. As though this, so the Rambam is here hinting at the fact that prayers of morning, afternoon, and evening and night, this was to some extent a mitzvah, but not a written. It doesn't say that this is the mitzvah which was given to them to precede mitzvah given to the people of Israel. It says that's what they did. If you look at it simply, they did it from their own initiative. But we see from here that the Rambam does regard tefillah, and even the 3 tefillot, as having a root in Bereshit. I think we have to understand this. The Rambam is very precise in every word that he uses. So I think what he's trying to teach us here is what it says in the Gemara, beginning of the 4th chapter, that Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, it says, Keneged Avot Sekanum, that these prayers were introduced to parallel what the forefathers did. They did it, and we know whatever they did, Ma'aseh Avot Siman Lebanim is a sign, is a good thing for the descendants to follow. Because that's what we have to learn. Bereshit doesn't only contains, we know, contains only the 6th, the 7th mitzvot Bnei Noach are mentioned, most of them explicitly, and also the mitzvah of Milah, Gidan Hashem. Otherwise, if you reckon the Torah mitzvot, they've all given later, Sinai. So, the fact that it includes these 3 tefillot means it's something that says Ikara min Torah. It's got a basic principle in Bereshit. Just like it's clear to us today, we've given many shiurim on this, what the forefathers did is a premonition of what might happen to their descendants throughout human history. We often describe that in different ways. There was the conflict between Ishmael and Yitzchak, and the conflicts in Yaakov and Esau are reflected in the conflicts which have arisen in the course of history between those who follow Christianity, to some extent, and those who follow Islam. The nations nearest to the nation of Israel, from the point of view of culture, who have nevertheless tried their best through many periods to stop the people of Israel fulfilling their mission. And therefore they've distorted it. And there's some amongst them for whom, as the Rambam describes, how this goes together. The Rambam says, right at the end of Hilchot Malachim, with the uncensored version, where he says, if you want to understand the significance of the Mashiach and how it's going to change the world, so he says, go and study a little bit what has happened to Ishmael and to Esau, to the founder of Islam and the founder of Christianity, who were the ones who were agents to bring the knowledge of the forefathers and of the Torah which was given to Moshe Rabbeinu to the rest of the world. And the time will come when they recognize, as it says in all the prophets, our forefathers gave it as distortion, the false tradition, and now we recognize who is the true Mashiach, which is the true Torah, and they bring them back to it. So I think it all goes together in this, I think, brilliant manner in which the Rambam brings the three tefillot. So we know, I'll just say by the side, that the three tefillot, Shachrit, Mincha and Maariv, what is the first blessing we say? And according to many, that's the blessing. You have to know what you're saying. Now the person, let's say, says that first blessing. He doesn't know Hebrew, and he just says it in Hebrew because he's learned how to read the letters, doesn't know what they mean. He's not fulfilled his duty. You can say it in any language, but you've got to understand it and absorb it. And what is the first blessing?
Baruch She'amar?
The first blessing of the main tefillah. The main tefillah, Shachrit, Mincha and Maariv, it's not got to do with Baruch She'amar. What is Shachrit, Mincha and Maariv? What is the special tefillah we say those three times?
Oh, Abraham, Isaac and Jacob.
It's the Amidah, yes, the Amidah, to stand in front of Hashem. And I mean, it says in Shulchan Aruch also that you've got to think what you're saying. If a person doesn't know what he's saying, there are some of the codes that say you have to say it again. And the main point is to mention the God of Abraham, the God of Yitzchak, the God of Yaakov. And what is the difference in the relationship between God and Abraham, God and Yitzchak? Why did they say the God of the forefathers? It's not good enough. Even Magen Abraham, we say, we don't say Magen Avot, because everything started with Abraham. But we've got to say the God of Abraham, God of Yitzchak, God of Yitzchak separately. Why? They introduced three different tefillot. And those three tefillot refer also to three different ways in which Hashem has a connection with the descendants of Abraham Yitzchak. And we all, let's say, a person who becomes a Jew after being a non-Jew, he has to say it as well. It's called, this is the God of my forefathers, meaning the God of every person who becomes Jewish is Abraham, Yitzchak and Yaakov. Because in a way, the morning, the afternoon and the night refer to different states, both for the nation and for the individual. To the time of the freshness and the extra energy that comes to us in the morning. There's the waning of energy just after the prime, and then there's the time of darkness, suffering. In all circumstances, the forefathers, they made a close link with the guide of human history. And that's expressed in the three tefillot. Now, Though, nevertheless, the Rambam says, as we'll see soon, that these three tefillot are not really a law of the Torah. And that's why I think nevertheless, it's a lesson of the Torah. And so therefore, in order to understand better what is really the mitzvah of prayer, and we see from expressions which are just quoted, there's a distinction made between what they were commanded. They commanded the mitzvah of Milah, commanded them the prohibition of Kiddush Hashem, but when it says tefillah, it says, they said the tefillah shachar, they said the tefillah mincha and ma'ariv. In other words, it came spontaneously. We see from here the mitzvah of the Torah, it can only really be fulfilled if you do it of your own accord. If you just regard it as a commandment, it's not good enough. But now let's see what the Rambam says, where he defines each mitzvah more precisely in the book of the mitzvah. So, the book of the mitzvah, which goes through all the 613 mitzvah, says the fifth mitzvah, quote, is that we've been commanded to serve Hashem, and he says this mitzvah is repeated many times to serve Hashem. He quotes specifically the verse from Shemot, chapter 23, verse 25, V'avadatem et Hashem Elokechem. You should serve Hashem your God. Now I'm going to suggest, although it doesn't be explicit here, that this is made the main source for the mitzvah aseh of tefillah, and the Rambam holds that the mitzvah aseh to pray to Hashem every day, once a day, because you got to look at the last part of the verse. It says, "V'avatem Hashem Elokechem, u'verach et lachmecha v'et meimecha." It said, then He will bless your bread and your water. You take away sickness from your midst. That's the total verse. And if you look at the verse carefully, there's something unusual. If you tell me what's unusual? The first part of the verse, V'avadatem et Hashem Elokechem, in what form is it given? Is it singular or plural? In English you don't see the difference, but in Hebrew there's a difference if you're addressing one person or addressing a lot of people. What's the difference? But some of you know, surely.
I'm embarrassed to say I don't know what
V'avadatem et Hashem Elokechem. You in the plural should serve Hashem your God in the plural. The verse continues, Uverach et lachmecha, then He will bless your bread in the singular, vet memecha, and your water in the singular, and He'll take away sickness from you in the singular. So why is the first part of the verse in the plural, and the second part of the verse is in the singular? Can any of you make a suggestion? Yes?
Does each of us have our own independent relationship with Hashem?
Yes, good. But I think it's very simple. That there's a hint here, if you really want to serve Hashem properly in prayer, you've got to pray as part of the people, not as an individual. That means, it is said elsewhere in the Chumash, this concept, mentioned quite frequently, that tefillah in a community is much stronger than tefillah of an individual. I'll give a moshal, I can say lahavdil ben zeh vazeh, nevertheless, there are common factors. There have been situations in the wars here in Israel when there have been members who followed transcendental meditation, who decide they're going to come as a whole group and go to the war zones and meditate. And they think that will bring a spirit of peace and tranquility to an area where there's strife and warfare. They came to the Lebanese war, whole groups of them, to meditate. What's the origin of meditation is in the Tanakh, no question. Tefillah is called higayon. Tefillah, you've got to Internalize, get back to your soul, and let your soul have connection with the soul of the world. If one person does it individually, it cannot be as strong as if he does it in a community. And the principle of community in the Tanakh starts with what type of community, Jewish or non-Jewish. Where is it first mentioned? You have 10 people. It's the minimum of a community. Where do you have that mentioned first in the Bible?
The miracle.
Pardon?
The spies.
No.
Sodom.
Before them. Sodom and Amorah.
Sodom.
Yeah. Hashem says, he agrees with Abraham, if there's going to be 10 people there who are still innocent, there's a chance that the society of cruelty and opposition to charity is going to change. But you've got to have a community, an individual not strong enough. And the same applies, which is the last time a minyan is mentioned in the Tanakh, in the Bible, that if you know, it says in the time when the Mashiach will come, then there will come from 10 representatives from all the 70 nations, will come to the land of Israel, and they'll grasp hold of the corners of the garments of the Jew, and they'll say, teach us your ways, because we know that God is with you. How many representatives do you have to have? 10. So the minyan, which we know that we needed, the minyan, in order that tefillah should be changed from an individual one to a communal one, that it's hinted at this pasuk, if you want to have enough bread and water, you want to be able to live, and you want to live without sickness, individual, you can say, of course you can say individual prayers. Like Avraham, Yitzchak and Yaakov, they said it as individuals. But it's much stronger if you do it in the community. That's hinted at this pasuk. In any case, there's one question people ask. The Rambam, as we'll see soon, says that there's a duty to say a prayer once a day, based on the Gemara, which says it's called Rachmeninu. And we've got to establish an appeal to the mercy of Hashem with your heart. Once a day. Where did he learn from once a day? And I'll say from this verse. Because the verse doesn't speak about morning, evening and night, no. But it does speak about something you need every day. It's true. The Kuzari says, for example, the 3 prayers instituted, they have a correspondence to what a person needs to keep himself reasonably minimal level of daily sustenance. You've got to have something to eat 3 times a day. Similarly, to keep your soul going, in connection with Hashem, you need spiritual sustenance 3 times a day. Then you're going to have 3 tefillot a day to keep on having an awareness that you've got a soul. And that's got to go together with the awareness you need. If you're going to live a life where you can really preserve yourself, minimum self-preservation, it's to have 3 minimum meals a day. Even all you've got is bread and water. Which is it. That's what you need. You need something solid, you need liquids. Without that, the body deteriorates. Similarly also with prayer. So this parallel developed by the Kuzari is also hinted at in this pasuk. So I think but the Rambam says, it also teaches us that at least you've got to make a link up with Hashem just like you need bread and water every day. So he brings other pasukim. Brings Otot Havod, it says you should serve Hashem. Otot Havod. And the verse we know best is what we say in the second passage of Kriyat Shema, which starts with, you should keep the mitzvah of do. You've got to serve Hashem with your whole heart. Over here the sages say, what does it mean the service with the whole heart? It doesn't mean about his service with offerings or service with doing the mitzvot, but it specifies with the whole heart. They say, Rahmana libabai, That's a reference to tefillah. Because tefillah b'li kavana le'keguf b'li neshama. So you have the tefillah without dedication, or to put it this way, a prayer without heart and head is like a body that is dead. So you say, it says, although we can say the commandment to serve Hashem is an overall commandment, which includes many different things, and we explained in the fourth root principle of what is called the mitzvah. Therefore, we don't include it in a specific mitzvah, because it's so all-inclusive. But there is a yichud, there's something special about it. The special aspect is prayer. And the Sifrei is the earliest commentary of the sages, preserved the oral tradition, on the verses of the Chumash. They also say L'avdo means learning, but it says specifically in one of the Midrashim, how do we know the major principle of tefillah is considered one of the mitzvot? Because it says, you shall have awe in front of Hashem, and they should serve Him. You serve Hashem in one way by learning Torah, and in another way in His sanctuary. What's mean in His sanctuary? Does not only mean going to the sanctuary to pray to Him. Otherwise, the Mikdashor, we know, also includes offerings. But it says the special teaching here is the service comes out with the heart, comes out in the prayers that always accompanied all the sacrifices. And then also includes Negdo, that you've got to, when you turn to Hashem, you turn via the Mikdash. As Shlomo HaMelech said in his inauguration prayer of the first temple. Well, then he said, the temple will become the central place of prayer for all Am Yisrael. Well, this is then in turn, if you go into what we began with, that's why the Avraham, Yitzchak and Yaakov, despite the fact he went through so much suffering, but his prayer was where?
In the afternoon.
No, it was at night, and where was it?
In the field.
It was on the Temple Mount. That's where I had the dream. Now, the dream is that it says this is the house of God, and this is the gate to heaven. The gate to heaven for all mankind. For Shlomo HaMelech says, it does not only apply to people of Israel, it applies to the Gentile world also, will ultimately recognize the Temple Mount a central place of prayer for the whole world. And although, as we mentioned a few times already, the Quran, they have their separate place of worship, but there's also the idea, the Quran of Moses, and the Torah of Moses, the central place of prayer ultimately, will be the Temple Mount. So it can be that place of the highest level, but we should know right next to the Temple Mount is what? There's a deep valley. What's it called? The deep valley right next to Har Zion?
Kidron? No.
Well, what is it called? It's called Gehinnom. Gehinnom is right next to the most holy place, the place of Beit HaMikdash, Har Zion and Har Habayit. They're high up, but if you don't respect it in the right manner, then unfortunately it can also lead to a place of evil. And today, unfortunately, what was practiced in Gei Ben Hinnom, the worst aspect of Canaanite idolatry and licentiousness and murder. What type of murder?
Yeah?
Throwing children into the fiery furnace of the mouth of the Moloch god.
Moloch.
Moloch worship, which is mentioned in last week's and this this week's Pasha, last week and the week before, 2 weeks running, Moloch worship as the worst aspect of Canaanite corruption. And unfortunately, although many people thought it's just ancient history, it's returned today. It's what's going on around us. That parents should make a festival when their children become suicide bombers, because the worship of death and worship of killing is a Moloch worship. It's a remnant of Moloch worship, or return, a relapse of Moloch worship. And it's even worse than Moloch in one way, because it's done in the name of the one and true God. But it come, unfortunately, the worst level, but it all hinted at, even in the prayer of Yaakov Avinu, because Yaakov Avinu represents and had to go through most terrible suffering, because this is the concept of all the prophets who speak about the birth pangs of the Mashiach. How the Mashiach will bring about a new birth for mankind. We know the more joyful the birth, sometimes the more painful the labor pains. And the labor pains of Am Yisrael have been terrible and continue to be terrifying, but let's hope we're at the end of those pains and we'll very soon experience the real birth of a new world. Anyway, that's what
Amen.
This is what the Rambam says in the Sefer Mitzvot, the mitzvah of Tefillah. So, one of the greatest scholars of all time to follow the Rambam was the Ramban, Nachmanides. Nachmanides, he wrote a brilliant commentary on the Chumash, which we have in English. It's all been translated. It's very worthwhile. If you're doing Rashi, also sometimes have a look at the Ramban. He's very deep and very thorough, and he goes to many basic principles of the Chumash that Rashi hints at, but he develops them on a high level. So the Ramban was also very critical of the Rambam. He also believed in 630 mitzvot, but he said the Rambam, he left out some mitzvot. The truth is that, I'll tell you something historical here, and everybody knows about this. For in recent times there was a great scholar called Chaim Heller, who made a thorough study of all the early manuscripts of the Book of the Mitzvot of the Rambam, and anything connected with it. And he found all over the world, in Munich and in London, the British Museum, and in other places in Hamburg, he found ancient manuscripts and also earliest prints. And he says that the Rambam himself, the reason why he wrote the Yad HaChazakah, his brilliant work, in pure Hebrew, based primarily on the language of the Mishnah. But in his time, it's a bit like today, the majority of the Jews where he was living, they weren't such masters of Hebrew, and they spoke Arabic. So he decided he wanted people to find out more, to have an introduction. So he wrote the introduction to his magnum opus, he wrote it in Arabic. And he had people to translate it. It's translated afterwards. As a result, the translators didn't always translate it exactly. And also, the scribes at that time, they copy everything, also made mistakes, and there were places they didn't understand. It turns out many of the criticisms of the Ramban, who never saw the original, in fact, he only did a bit of Arabic, and others also, they only saw the Hebrew translation. And there were many things, Hebrew translations were not based upon the earliest manuscripts, and therefore he made certain mistakes. Nevertheless, I'll tell you a general principle. It's connected with this. the Ramban here on this mitzvah, he brings many sources from the Gemara. How can the Rambam say Tefillah is the law of the Torah? He does qualify in mitzvah number 10, which speaks about Shema, where the Rambam says, you should know, the mitzvah of saying a tefillah applies every day, any time of the day, any word of prayer of a Jew or of a Jewess. They fulfill a mitzvah of the Torah. Now there are many statements in the Gemara that tefillah is the Rabbanan, and that's the main criticism of the Ramban. If those of you who've learned brachos, previous chapters, and now also, or learning Hilchos Tefillah, you know there are many sources in the Gemara that says Tefillah Kriyat Shema is min Torah, Tefillah Rabbanan, therefore I'll give you a simple law, also from the Shulchan Aruch. If a person does not know if he said the Shema or not, does he have to repeat it? Has to repeat it?
Shema.
Yes, he's got to repeat it. Morning and evening. The Jew to say Shema at night, and in the day. If you forgot to say it, then you should say it. But if you forgot to say tefillah, if you don't know whether you said it or did not say it, then what the din is, safek Rabbanan l'kula. So if you have a doubt in anything of the law of the Torah, then if you're in doubt, if it's a prohibition, leave it out. If it's a mitzvah of the Torah, you've got to repeat it. Because you may have missed it, you don't know. But if it's the law of the sages, Chachamim, and you're in doubt, you don't know whether you did the mitzvah or did not do the mitzvah, you don't repeat it. You don't have to repeat it. And if it's a prohibition, then if you don't know whether you did it, you don't have to, it's as though you didn't do it. Safek Rabbanan l'kula. That's the general principle. It's mentioned in the Gemara a few places. So how can the Rambam say it's the law of the Torah, the mitzvah of the Torah? So the Rambam says explicitly, a few places, it's true, there's a mitzvah to say tefillah once a day in your own language, however you feel about it, say a few words to Hashem. If you missed it, you've got to say it again. It's the law of the Torah. Then say what you want, in whatever language. It should come a bit from the heart. I would even say, Rahman alibabai, is that phrase is used. Hashem is merciful. What behind, what to mean? Also it says, to say tefillah every day in the Gemara is called Rachmenenu. Because Rachmenenu, and the din is women, for example. It's well known, women who are very busy, so women who are too busy, don't have time to pray, they've got to see to their 11 children or whatever, some women have to go to work as well, and at the same time raise up the children. They're very busy. They don't need to say the tefillah, but they should say a prayer from the heart every day. If they didn't do it, it comes to near the end of the day, do it right away. It doesn't matter when you say it, any time in the 24 hours. And why is it called Rachameh? Because like this, the whole concept of prayer is like this. Hashem is ready to let human beings go according to principles of cause and effect, of natural behavior. So if a person behaves like an animal, then he will live like an animal. He will not be able to improve himself. On the other hand, if a person turns to Hashem and says, please Hashem, help me to become a better person, help me to overcome my animalistic urges, or help me to give, I don't have enough to eat, help me to have food. If it's in time of trouble, also in time even when everything goes well, but it shouldn't go wrong. You've got to pray to Hashem. They're praying for Hashem's mercy, but that's got to come from the heart. That's what's called Rachama. Rachameh, it's called, what does Hashem want in life? He wants the heart. So that's the mitzvah. But the times of davening and the text of davening, that's something different. And the Rambam describes it explicitly. If critics come, if those of you like to go through, the Ramban brings many sources from the Gemara that the tefillah and the Rabbanan. But Rambam can explain them all. He says, the Rabbanan, yes, is the text. So why does it say, Bekat Hamazon, and Kriyat Shema is Min Torah? What's the difference? What's the difference in the character of the mitzvah of tefillah? The Rambam says anything you want to say. And Birkat Hamazon, so you bless Hashem. It's also instituted later. The text of Birkat Hamazon, who instituted it? Not the Chumash. But there is an explicit pasuk in the Chumash on which a lot of Birkat Hamazon is based. As we say, that's part of the Birkat Hamazon which gives the wording in the Chumash. So the Chumash says, if you've eaten, you've got to bless Hashem. Those are the words. So that's Oraita. And the Chachamim only built upon this specific text and added other things. Same Kriyat Shema, it says explicitly, these words should be upon your heart, and you should speak them. V'dibarta bom. V'dibarta, we should speak the words of the Shema. It's got double meaning. We speak the words of Torah, but its immediate reference is speak these words, the words of the Shema. You've got to say. So it's in the Chumash. Therefore, it's the law of the Torah. But the prayer, there's a prayer comes from the heart. Let's say in your own words, whatever you want. And that's the Midat Torah. The text of prayer, as you see, the Rambam says, the beginning of the laws of Tefillah. There the Rambam describes it in detail. Because the Seva Mitzvot, it says just things briefly. Here got Tefillah, he expounds on it. And there he says much more. We turn to getting here got Tefillah. Now it's very explicit. Says like this. And he says, Hilchot Tefillah contains two mitzvot. La'avod, because it includes Birkat Kohanim, La'avod el Hashem b'chol yom mitzvah, to serve Hashem every day in Tefillah. So he doesn't just say a Tefillah, no, it's got to be an expression of the service of Hashem. And then this won't deal now with the priestly blessing. So then I'll paraphrase. It's a positive commandment to say prayer every day, and the main source he brings is like the mitzvah says, you should serve Hashem, your God, the plural, and then he will bless your bread and your water. And from tradition, they taught this avodah is prayer, as it says in the Shema, to serve him with your whole heart. And the sages say, which is the avodah shebelev, in the heart, that is tefillah. That's why it has to be said b'kavanah. So on this, actually, there are two interpretations. The most regular interpretation is that you've got to say the first blessing with real kavanah, know what you're saying. There's another explanation, which is given by Reb Chaim Brisk, who says it's called amida. Because the main thing in the tefillah is that you've got to have an awareness you're standing in front of Hashem. You've got to know in front of you you're standing. Because a person in life, you go through life and your concentration is on what I'm doing. And the person, even let's say a person's learning also, might be learning, he's thinking, might be a subject, not like a brachot is easier, but you might be doing Bokakama, or what happens if an ox goes a cow, and what happens with the emperor. So your mind is in different things. Or Bomatzir, the two people come and they have an argument, who does the cloak belong to? So, your mind is in that. So tefillah, you've got to know I'm standing in front of Hashem. So you've got to transfer your concentration from perhaps developing a solution to a problem of the logic of the Gemara, or even what the translation of the words, and you've got to think more of my inner soul connected with Hashem, with the heart. Anyway, the Rambam then continues, after even the source, the number of tefillah is not from the law of the Torah, neither the text. And the tefillah from Torah has no fixed time, and therefore women also have the duties. We know because women have all the duties which are not dependent on a particular time. It's every day of the year. The obligation is like this, that a person should mitchanen, he's got to say supplication, or mitpalel. Now the word mitpalel, it's got a deeper meaning. Do any of you know from Hebrew what type of form is mitpalel?
Reflexive.
Reflexive. So it means you've got a reflexive form. What's the root? The philo. What's philo mean? Judgment. So therefore, it's a reflexive judgment. What's that? You've got to judge yourself. In life, we're constantly judging other people. But we don't often judge ourselves. One of the reasons we judge ourselves is say, well, I am what I am. What do you mean I am? A judge is going to judge somebody else. What am I going to do? But judging yourself you only do if you know that Hashem is within you. Now the voice of Hashem is within you. The voice of Hashem is the neshama. Yeah? So if you're aware of the fact, I'm a human being, and Hashem, who is pure spirit, has created inside me also a pure spiritual power, and let me judge my actions according to that pure spiritual power. Because if not, I'll think, whatever Hashem made me, that's me. And what means self-judgment? How can a person judge himself? Because he's what he is. And we always have a bias towards our own selves, to our instincts. So my instincts rule my life. But we say no. That's why the truth is, to make moral improvement is not really possible unless you have an awareness of Hashem. But the person will say, what are improvement? I'm influenced by everything that goes on around me, and also my inner instincts. That's it, that's me. But there's a me that is spiritual, that remains forever, and there's the instinctive powers which basically are physical, and then they're expressed through the physical also, going through different procedures to influence the emotions, and the emotions themselves create whatever I desire, for good or for bad. So we've got to know that all that is transient, and everything in life depends on the extent to which a person has brought his conscience, which is the voice of God inside us, to go and say, oh no, there's a difference in good and bad. And for example, I'd like to, let's pick it up now, I'm very hungry, and I see there's a lot of nice portions of food here laid out for everybody, and I think I deserve, and my instincts require, a double portion. And therefore I'm going to take the main food that's being offered, I'm going to take an extra portion. Maybe the other people wouldn't, some people they wouldn't want it. So therefore that takes over. But if you've got a conscience, you say to yourself, no, maybe there won't be enough for everybody. Sometimes I see in the dining room that people come and there's no food left for them. So let me think about that. And then your conscience takes over and you say, right, I'm going to take a small portion just to make sure that everybody else will have what they need. And that applies not just to the daily meal, it applies to all sorts of circumstances in life. So we say like this. So he says the key of the mitzvah is mitpalel. Mitpalel means to judge yourself in accordance with what Hashem, who is the source of the highest level of morality and kindness, what he would want. And then also to declare his praise, and then to ask what he needs. And then after the praise and thanksgiving to Hashem for all the goodness that it influenced each person, lefi kocho. So here the Rambam, I will say, he speaks about the minimum and the maximum of the law of the Torah. He often does that. I mean, just really, if you could go to his words thoroughly, you'll see all the elements of the fixed prayer are included in what it says here. But she said you can do your own words, however you wish to do it. And the minimum is even a short, very short prayer, whatever it is. Rachmaninoff. That's the law of the Torah. He goes on with this in Gimel. If he became accustomed to say a prayer which includes supplication, self-judgment, and the praise of Hashem, and then ask his requests, and then thanksgiving, if he does that, he increases his tchino bakasha, and therefore if he's not one who has got a good mastery of language, he speaks according to his ability, any time that he wants, and any number of prayers that he wants, each person according to his means. Some people will daven once a day, and some will daven many times. And all of them will daven towards the Beit HaMikdash, wherever they are, because that's a special aspect. And that's how it was from Moshe Rabbeinu until Ezra. So really the Rambam is describing, why does he describe it this way? Because he said, look at the Tanakh, the Bible is filled with so many prayers, not just the word here, all types of prayers. What Tehillim contains huge prayers, deepest prayers, in fantastic language. But a person could pray whatever he wanted. You go through the Tanakh, there's prayers of all the prophets and all the saints, different types of prayers. Some say. So she says, but there was no fixed prayer. But then he continues, when Am Yisrael went into the exile of Nebuchadnezzar, and then they became intermingled with the Persian, the Greek, and other empires of the world, and many children were born to them in different countries, and their language became confused, and they adopted different parts of other languages, and a person was not able to speak clearly his thanksgiving and praise to Hashem, as it says that in that Galut, Nehemiah, some that spoke the Ashdod language, they didn't even recognize Jewish languages anymore. So, therefore, they weren't able to describe the praise of Hashem in the holy tongue until it became mixed up with other languages. Then Ezra and his court, who established the Second Commonwealth, they introduced the 18 blessings. The 3 first are praise to Hashem, the 3 last are thanksgiving, and in between there are questions, requests that we have individually, ish va'ish, and then also not just individual but for the community, so that everything would be available in a fixed manner, they could learn it. So because of this, they instituted, called the Anshe Knesset Gedolah, the men of the Great Assembly, all the blessings, all the prayers put in order, so that it would have more an educational and also communal influence, and unify also the people of Israel in one style of prayer, which brings them also to feel like one community, even though they're scattered all over the world. So then he carries on and says that's how the sages arranged that tefillot should follow the number of the offerings. 2 tefillot every day to correspond to what? Shnei Tamidim, the 2 constant offerings. And where there's a Musaf offering, another prayer, Musaf prayer, or the festival, special prayers. So this is the night prayer, because that was the time when the different parts of the offerings were still burning on the altar. So these are all he said, the concept of the 3 tefillot, with all the details, were instituted by the sages. So here the Rambam makes it quite clear that the mitzvah of the Torah applies daily, in whatever language, in whatever manner. The minimum is just a few words. The maximum, as you see in the Tanakh, could be very long prayers, sometimes very short prayers. People could choose whatever was needed for the individual or for the national needs. But from the time, Because you've got to understand, the 10 tribes disappeared already earlier. What was left? The tribes of Yehuda and around Jerusalem, and they will take to exile by Nebuchadnezzar. And then the second Commonwealth, that's what started really a formulation of many things by the men of the Great Assembly, who wanted to see there should be unity amongst what was left of Am Yisrael. Otherwise the dispersion would lead to almost total assimilation. Once they lose the language, they lose connection also with the Bible. What's happened? It's an Alexandrian community, which was, they still had a Septuagint, with most of the Jews there only in Greek. So we see from Philo and others. And gradually, nearly all of them disappeared from Jewish history. And that's what's happening today as well, where there's no synagogue that preserves the principle of Anshe Knesset Gdolah, then assimilation, intermarriage, caused Jews to have no more knowledge of their heritage, and sometimes don't feel themselves Jewish at all. And as a result, they sometimes come out with even anti-Jewish and anti-Israel ideas, which they absorb from the nations of the world. So this is the great importance of preservation of the tefillah. So there's another aspect to all this, but I might deal with that another time, because I'll just introduce it with one sentence, that there's another aspect of tefillah which is mentioned by the Ramban also, and it's based upon what it says in the Chumash: when the people of Israel are in trouble, then they should blow in trumpets and cry to Hashem, and then they'll be redeemed. It deals primarily with Tefillah B'tzibur, but according to many, it applies to any troubles. There's a separate mitzvah for crying to Hashem when the people are in trouble. And that we'll deal with in another share. There also